Now, having asked the key questions, asking situational questions and getting great information. Maybe you've registered certain problems and heard these problems from the customer that they mentioned that you know that your product or services can actually solve, and something that maybe you can do better just in general. Well, guess what? That is amazing. But then again, resist the temptation to try to say, hey, we can do better than them. Resist the temptation from that. You want to be able to first get into this stage, the presentation phase. You've exhausted your questions. You've got to the point with the customers that you got enough information. You really understood their situation, and that some of the problems that they have, that right now at this moment, now is the time to do the presentation. Now, getting ready for the presentation, mentally, you have to think about two things going on right now in your head. You have two things that should be going on. The first one is, now that you've heard some of the problems, you need to incorporate some of those issues within your presentation. So in other words, the customer may have a specific problem with their current product or vendor. What you want to be able to do is, ask you go through the presentation, that you're answering, mentally ticking off every single one of those problems and how you can do better, how your company can solve those problems. Also, incorporate into that are anticipating the objections. You need to be ready for that. Customers usually have a bunch of objections. They're going to have objections. What I want you to do is to incorporate what I call objection blocking into your presentations. A blocking objection is based to, before they raise an objection, that you go ahead and answer that question. For example, pricing is always a big objection. So instead of hiding it or waiting to the end and then all of a sudden dropping it later on, you should say something like this: you know what, Mrs. Customer, I just want to be upfront and to let you know that our prices are typically higher than our competitors, and there is a reason for that, and I want to be able to explain it to you. And then you go back into your presentation. You see what I just did? I raised the presentation, I raised the objections, and I was able to maintain it in my presentation by raising it first, by then saying, hey, let me explain to you why the price is that way. If we wait for the customer to raise that objection, he or she may not, but if they do raise the objection, you might not be ready to answer that, or you might actually sound, defensive. By you taking initiative and raising it first, raising that price objection first, the customer will say, you know what, I'm glad that they brought it up, because I'm going to actually ask that, or might not even ask that. This means that you're in tune with your customer. If there is a problem that they're having that you can solve, you can say something like this. Earlier on we talked about certain problem, this situation that you mentioned, and I want you to know one thing. I want to be able to show you how our product or services can actually solve that potential problem of yours. Let me walk you through that. Again, incorporating the founded problems and anticipating the objections, and you have a winning combination for a great presentation. So what I want you to do right now is to think about problems that your customers might have, and I want you to be able to list it out. Now, on another list that is in your mind, anticipating objections, you need to be able to anticipate objections that are going to be raised, right? Other than price. You're getting these objections consistently, more likely if you've been doing this for a long period of time. Since you know it's going to be raised, don't wait for it to be raised. Raise it up for yourself for now and resolve it during the presentation. So putting everything all in together. In preparing for your presentation, list out the found problems, or the typical found problems that your customer may have, the complaints that they may have about the potential products that they're using right now, and put all that information in your presentation. List out all the anticipated objections, and in your presentation incorporate where you would raise those objections yourself and how you would actually answer them as you are talking to the customer. Whether it's in a one-on-one situation or if you're doing a large presentation where you have a lot of people. By understanding the problems, by anticipating their objections, you're going to be able to have them look at you and say that, you know what, you understand what their problems are, and there's going to have a good relationship because you've created a great presentation. So then again, list out the anticipated problems that your customers may have, but also list out the anticipated objections that you may get, and begin to look at that and say, how can I answer this within a presentation? So what I want you to be able to do is, take out a pen and paper, and start writing down. Give yourself about 10 to 15 minutes. And if you're doing this in a group setting, give yourself about 15 to 20 minutes to put this down before you move on to the next video.